Let's talk balls and strikes. Dan Lippman is the White House reporter for Politico. Thanks for joining me, Dan. I want to talk. We've been talking about this. The Atlantic article, the reliability of anonymous sources. Editor-in-chief of the Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, has said he's got 4 sources, all unnamed. What are your thoughts, being one of the highest profile reporters in D.C., about using unnamed sources?
I think they're entirely legitimate to use them in certain cases. Not every case deserves an anonymous source. And in stories, if a source is saying something that is completely uncontroversial, they should be on the record. But something sensitive like this, I can see why Goldberg would include that and would use them, because as long as you can trust the sources themselves, and they seem to be senior military officials or former military officials, they don't want to get crosswise with Trump. And they don't want to get on the receiving end of lots of negative tweets on them. You know, you can get death threats from those things. And so that's why they are anonymous in this case. So
our audience understands what we're asked to do then, as a viewer, as a listener, or as a reader, is to put our trust in the reporter, in fact, and that we trust that they have vetted these sources and have vetted the information. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and so reporters have to know who those anonymous sources are, obviously, and like Goldberg knows these people. Jennifer Griffin, the Fox News military correspondent, who also confirmed key details of this, she knows these sources, and the president knows them too. And so this is this is not, these anonymous sources are not unknown to the reporter and their editor and legal teams sometimes who vet these stories before publication when they're very sensitive. And so, that's why people use them.
Let's take a listen to Goldberg in his own words on MSNBC recently. Listen.
It is a reasonable question to ask why people who have had direct exposure to Donald Trump, who know what Donald Trump has said, who know what Donald Trump has done, won't simply come out and say it. And I share that view that it's not good enough.
So isn't that Goldberg saying, in order for us to believe him, he needs to bring more goods, and maybe a named source or something more, so we can buy into this?
Well, I think obviously named sources make the story more credible, because people can say, hey, is John Kelly, is he more reliable than, say, President Trump? And I'm not saying Kelly was the source, but sometimes people do, it says decline a comment, when in fact they actually were talking to the reporter anonymously. And so it's usually just decline a comment on the record. And so, but we don't live in an ideal world. And for former administration officials, they have to, maintain livelihoods in DC. And so they're worried about getting on the receiving end of criticism from this president.
Dan, I know you've done, you've studied history of journalism. I know this. Just tell our audience how the use of unnamed sources has evolved over time.
Well, it has had an evolution. It feels like there have been a lot of anonymous sources in the last few years, because there's just been so many leaks from this administration. And there's constant backbiting and infighting and knife fights in the White House and in the administration, with people criticizing their own colleagues because they don't like them, or they want to get an upper hand or an advantage. And so, I wasn't around during the Carter administration, but it feels like there were fewer anonymous sources back then.
Honestly, it feels like the use of anonymous sources was almost what something that the Inquirer would do, where it didn't feel like it was real journalism. It was more hearsay. It was more gossip column type stuff. And now it's become commonplace in journalism every day. Dan, I ran out of time. I want to continue on this. We'll bring you back again very soon. Dan Lippman, everybody, the Politico article, he is on top of all things DC. Dan Lippman, Politico. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.